Okay, who's up for a little humiliation? Come on, Sue. Come on, Park. Come on. Laura, thank you. Sorry. Oh, and Rick. Good. All right, Sue and Rick over here. Park and Laura over here. Rick and Sue are longtime faithful members of Aldersgate United Methodist Church. They've been on mission trips. They have led youth events. They have had numerous leadership roles in the church. The pastor and the lay leader of the church called you and said they needed to have an opportunity to talk with you because the church has a really exciting opportunity. Now, what they know and what you're going to learn is now at this point in the year, mid-August, the church is about $12,000 behind budget. But a property has come open to them that would be ideal as a youth center. And this church has wanted to focus in on youth ministry for a long, long time. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But it's going to demand, in the immediate future, about $125,000, $130,000. So they have called to come and talk to you about what you can do to help the church in this exciting time. Take a couple moments to think about what you'd like to say. Talk amongst yourselves if you have questions. And then we're going to see how this visit unfolds.
I believe in the leadership of the lady.
What I'd like all of you to watch for is where you see glimpses of brilliance and where you might suggest doing something a little differently. And just kind of observe, and we'll have some feedback after the visit. You ready? All right, let's see how the visit goes.
Well, hi, how are you guys tonight?
Oh, we're fine. What are you doing here?
You
don't just normally stop by on a Tuesday night.
I was hoping Sue would make some of those brownies.
Those lemon bars today.
Good. Well, you know, you guys have been very faithful members of the church for a long time and very helpful in a lot of areas. I know you're passionate about the what we're doing in this community and how we're serving God. And we just found out about something that we really wanted to tell folks about and see who else might be excited about it with us. You know, that youth opportunity we've been talking about for a while, wanting to try to find some place for our youth to get together and everything. Well, it turns out there's actually a property available.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's great location, great facility, and the price is pretty reasonable too, but it's something that...
So no one's just going to donate it to us?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Okay.
It's not being given to us by the people that own it, so we're going to have to find other people who'd like to help give it to us by contributing. And we're going around talking to lots of church members.
But you're the first.
So
we're feeling our way through this.
Well, and you know how I can be with finances because I look at them all the time. And I remember getting a letter in our statement last month that basically said, we're $12,000 in the hole. And where are we going to get, you haven't said the price yet, but I'm assuming, how are we going to make up that difference and be able to to buy something? Do you have a plan for some sort of campaign? What are you looking for?
Well, that's one of the reasons we're talking to you, is see what kind of ideas you have on that. You mentioned the price, and the owners would like $120,000.
Whoa, whoa!
Well, you know, for the property, it's not bad. But yeah, it is one of those, woo!
Yeah, okay.
Eyebrow raising things.
Interesting, and once again, I know I've done capital campaigns before, and there's that whole third deal you got to figure out. I guess I know personally we can't afford to. We're pretty much giving what we feel we can give at this point. I think a lot of members feel that way. So I guess I'm curious what your plan might be.
I think at this point.
You know me, I like to play. Oh, yeah.
At this point, we're looking at the opportunity, and it seems that in a way that we've been looking for an avenue to develop this ministry, and this opportunity may be a blessing. It may not be the right thing for us, but looking to explore that with you and others, and to understand how best we might craft the message to help discern that process.
Okay.
What would you think about maybe bringing it up to the different members of the church, and maybe for the elders in the church, maybe we could, play on their values and responsibilities and how they feel responsible for things, but then talking to the youth and seeing how important this project would be to them. Make it a project, make it a vision for them, like a mission trip, because they get so excited about going on and do those.
That's a lot of bake sales.
Maybe they're willing to babysit and break yards. That's important enough to them.
I would underestimate the kind of miracles that God can do through kids that are really excited. So.
That's true.
Or through seniors or other members that really develop a passion for the mission.
Rick, you brought up one of the challenges I think that's going to be facing us in this, and that we have currently a deficit in the budget. Any thoughts about how we might present this opportunity at the same time while we've got this?
That's always an interesting challenge to figure out how you mesh your current operating budget then with some sort of capital thing that you want to do, and where you push those two.
We wanna be good stewards in the current time, but not lose sight of the future and ministries and the direction that we want to have.
Well, I think I'd be willing to help talk to others about this and the rest, and I think you just need to bring in a larger group to talk about this. Put together a plan on how we look at it.
Would you and Sue be willing to host something maybe in your home where we could have a few more families come and join in a smaller setting?
Certainly.
Sure, I suppose we could figure something out.
Okay, scene. Thank you so much for where you left us.
That's great, but that's not a real scenario. So. We were about to solve the problem.
Well, that's one question I would ask. How close do you think we were getting to moving this forward? And what was being moved forward? Yeah.
One of the things that I thought first is, how in the world are they going to get these people, Farnsworth and Wheezy, to make this contribution toward this with the knowledge of the debt? But the thing where I thought was brilliant was what moved forward was ownership, and it became a problem solving. They gave to the couple being visited the challenge to help them solve the problem. And I could see your body language change. They relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
They became engaged and involved in it. So I think what moved forward was a sense of shared ownership and excitement about the vision without getting all tangled up in the cost and how far behind we are. That became secondary to the ministry.
Is that what you were feeling?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I will admit, as they talked, I I felt more relaxed and yes, willing
Okay.
to do it. I mean, I guess from my perspective, it was more, they came to us, it made me feel good that they would come to us, but what I agreed to do was not give money yet, but to at least start a conversation.
Okay, just explore.
Okay.
I thought we moved from no to maybe.
Or no to how can we help get our arms around it.
Okay.
Or moving from fear to generosity.
Okay. All of these are incredibly good things. And I want to say they are why most of our churches are in the financial shape they are currently in. I'm going to now tell you really, really unpopular things. But I want to say I am not a really prescriptive teacher. I don't really have a this is the way you do it kind of approach, except when it comes to visitation. I want to say some things and share some things with you in this time that I think are very, very important if we want to help move people from being givers to the church to truly generous stewards. Because first of all, I think that when we are faced with the challenge or the opportunity to talk to people about money, we get very nervous. I sensed some nervousness in getting to that real issue. Often, the real issue we need to deal with is a financial issue. And so we need to address it openly, honestly, and quickly. The first thing I want to share is attitude is everything. As leaders, clergy, laity leaders in congregations, when we invite people to give, we are inviting people into ministry. We are inviting people to make a difference. We are giving people an opportunity to do something really great. So, we don't have to be reluctant about asking. We don't have to be nervous about asking. We need to get ourselves psyched up. Laura and Park should have taken a few minutes of raw time to say, what are we going in there to say? What are we going in there to do? And how are we going to do it? I didn't give them that opportunity. They didn't really have the plan. They didn't have time to say, what do we want to come out of there with? When we have something exciting missionally in the church, and we're to the point where we're calling people on the phone saying, I want to come and talk to you, we are at the point of asking them to make a gift. And one of the first things I would do, sitting down face to face, is to say, we're here to talk to you about making a gift. Now, if that makes them run screaming from the room, you have your answer. And that's an okay answer. You don't ever have to be worried about the response. Let me just ask for a minute. How many of you here have ever encountered anyone in the church who has said, I don't think it's appropriate for us to be talking about money? What has your response to them been?
Jesus talked about money about 25% of the time, the things he said had to do with money or possessions.
Okay.
Part of our discipleship. So
And I'm trying to be like Jesus, so expect it 25% of the time.
it's part of our relationship, part of our discipleship.
Okay.
We have to address it.
So you took it as a teaching moment to push back to say, I hear you might be uncomfortable, but this is an important issue of our faith. What about some of the others?
Money's a good indicator of, or barometer of our faithfulness.
Okay? So money can be a good barometer, indicator of our faithfulness. So it's important to talk about that. What else? Have any of you felt you needed to back off because people in the church said, we don't like hearing about this? If you feel bad, call me. I'd be willing to talk you through this one, because I do believe that as Christians we can't compartmentalize. We need to take seriously our role of helping people to understand giving is an outward and visible sign of that inward spiritual relationship. And so if we're going to help people grow, then we need to be challenging them on how they use their time, how they use their resources, how they live their lives, the choices they make, the decisions they make. They don't have to agree with us. They don't even have to like what we're saying. But the church has to be an open forum where we talk about those issues of faith. And as George pointed out, you can't do a serious engagement with the Old Testament or the Gospels and not deal on a regular basis with money, wealth, possessions. The other thing is, what people give is essentially the capacity we have as church to do ministry. If people don't give, we have to make tough decisions about what we can and can't do. If God is calling us to do something, our question is never can we or can't we. Our question is always how can we? And so we invite everyone into the congregation. Okay, I'll get this. Take two. This is where we edit. This is where we have to invite everyone in the congregation into the conversation. Attitude is everything. This is something great. This church has an opportunity to do a ministry that they've been talking about for a long time. This is a good thing. So we keep the excitement up, the energy up, the possibility up. Keep before people a vision of what they can do. Now, with Sue and Rick, they have had history working with the youth. Folks, in the kindest, most non-manipulative Christian way, exploit the daylights out of that fact. These people have a heart for youth, a passion for youth. They have a history with youth. This is an opportunity to say to them, we're challenging you to figure out a way. We understand things are tough for you, things are tough for the church. We understand this is not a simple thing, but we know that this is the right thing to do. So you did a good job. Let's all get on the one side. This isn't the church leaders against the church people. This isn't Family Feud. Everybody's on the same side. And so work on getting that positive energy going. No apologies. Never apologize for asking a church person to give. Never apologize. There's nothing to be sorry about. It's part of our covenant life together. Now, you can be sympathetic when people can't give. That's okay. Let people know this isn't a make or break, that this is something you want to do with them and want them to do with you, but don't apologize. I've seen pastors in a weekly worship service essentially apologize for having to interrupt worship to take the offering. There's nothing to apologize for. Know your donors. Know who they are before you go there. And I would say, don't go to every donor for everything. Different people connect with your congregation in different ways. Different passions, different interests, different abilities. There are certain things that have become kind of taboo in the church. And I want to emphasize, I'm with every writer, leader. George said it yesterday in his little presentation of the 50 things you need to know. I believe the pastor of a local congregation ought to know who gives what. There are some pastors who say, I don't want to know. There are some pastors who have said, it'll make a difference to me. I don't want to give preferential treatment to the good givers and thumb my nose at those who don't. Like that would ever happen. But giving is an indication of what's going on. You are a leader of a community of faith where people have made commitments to the community of faith. Your stewardship of the community of faith means you're supposed to know. So know what people are giving. Know their life circumstances. As George said yesterday, if someone who has been a faithful giver stops giving, that can be an indication something's happening in their life. If there are people who make substantial one-time gifts or increases, that's an indication that something is going on in their life. I also want to say, without sounding too mercenary, it's also important to know who isn't giving as much as they could give. United Methodists have fallen below 2% as the normal percentage of income giving to the church. If you've got people who are giving on average somewhere between 1.7 and 1.8 of income, and you start talking about tithing, you're speaking a foreign language. You are talking to people who aren't ready to hear it. But what about those people who are giving sacrificially? What about those people who are close to a tithe? Do you want to just have one message for everybody? One that alienates and takes some people out of the conversation? No. Know the economics of your congregation. Know who the haves and the have-nots are. And I really say that sincerely. Yeah, Bill.
Question about that exact point. How do you know who the haves and have-nots are? Sometimes you don't know about how they live. How do you know if Joe Blow's giving 10% or 1.8%? How do you know the income and what they should or could give?
It's going to be estimates. It's going to be ballparks. You can tell a little bit. I was out not long ago with a church, and they were having some financial struggles, and I was doing some consultation, and one of the leaders in the church, excuse me, he said, "You've got to understand how things are here. The economy's been real bad. The economy has been so bad that my wife and I have not gotten out to our lake cottage once this season, and we haven't been out on the boat in 8 months." And I said, "No, you need to understand, the majority of people in your church don't have a lake cottage. And so when you're crying poverty, that doesn't quite communicate well." And this man put back his head and laughed. And he said, "You're the first person here that's challenged me on that." And so he made a gift to the church, not because anybody from the church asked, but because I sat down with him and told him, "I think this is something that would be really good for you to do with the church." You get to know in general, and the way you find out also is talk to them. Ask. Ask people if they're in a financial position to do something. We'll get back to that in a minute because that's getting a little bit ahead. Always give home field advantage. I believe as a pastoral leader, without equivocation, and a layperson as well, lay leader, you ought to be planning to have a conversation with every one of your active members about their giving. One thing you may note: pastor, lay leader, pastor, finance chair, pastor, trustee, pastor, I don't care what. Go out 2 by 2. Have these conversations with the pastoral leader and a key leader of the congregation sitting down together. But go where the people want to go. Put them at ease. Let them have the home field advantage. Don't have these conversations at the church, because then it's all about the church. One of the things that's important to remember is when you're asking people to give, it's not a one-way relationship. You're not just asking them to do for the church what the church needs. You are helping them connect with, engage with, and be involved with the ministry of the church. So you are giving them an opportunity. If you call, and I would say, make a personal call and say directly, I want to come and have a conversation with you about making a gift to the church. If they say we already give, say I know. I want to thank you for that, and I want to talk to you about making a gift to the church. Let them know. Be direct. Don't hedge around what you're there for. If they want to meet you in a coffee shop, that's fine. If they want to meet you at the church, that's fine. Let the person you're asking to make the gift be the one to say, yes, this is where we will have the conversation with you. Be specific. Now, I want to get down to this level of specificity and talk about if this case with Rick and Sue. We've got a church that's $12,000 in debt. You don't want to ignore that indebtedness. But when you have an opportunity to do something exceptional, it's a wonderful opportunity not only to do something exceptional, but to bridge the gap, to get the giving going up on a regular basis. What I would suggest you do in this with Rick and Sue, if they were still sitting here, I would say very definitely, what we want you to consider is over the next year, making a gift of $1,000 to this project and increase your weekly giving $10 a week. That will help us bridge the shortfall, and that will lay a foundation that we can build upon. Now, why name dollars? Why tell people a specific amount?
They can wrap their head around it.
Okay, they can wrap their head around it.
Chunking it out helps.
Chunking it out helps.
And anytime you start bargaining, you've got to start somewhere.
Okay.
They can say, whoa, we can't do $1,000.
Thank you, Gene. Anytime you want to start bargaining, you start somewhere, which means that this gives them something concrete to say, all right, we can do that. Or I'm not sure we can do that.
And like your paper says, the worst they can say is no.
That's it.
But maybe you can say, well, no, I can't do that, but I would be willing to do this.
Right. Clarify the options. Make sure no is one of them. If you say to somebody, and I have often played this game of going out and saying, okay, this is going to cost us $120,000, $125,000. We're looking for people who can take a big chunk of that. We're looking for people who will work with us, who will make a commitment of $20,000. If we can get 3 people get $20,000, we've got lead gifts that we can build around. Start high, make people's eyes bug out, make them look at one another and start shivering, and then you've got lots of space to work backwards. These people love their church. These people are not likely to say, how dare you, and then we're done. But say, you know, we're going to look at this level. If we can get 24 people in the church to make this commitment of the $1,000, we can find 1 person in the congregation or 3 people in the congregation that are willing to make matching gifts. And if we get 24 people to make that $10 a week commitment for the year, we'll bridge the gap, we'll pay, we'll meet budget, and we'll lay a foundation to build on for the future. Most people won't immediately say no, but what you've done is you've kick-started their thinking processes. Well, we can't do that. What can we do? That's too much, but we don't want to not support this. Yeah, Chris?
It's also true without the parameters, they can offer 500 when they may have been prepared to do 4,000. But without knowing that you were looking for 5,000, and without that clearly stated, they're gonna go, well, you know, yeah, I can write you a check for 500. So it's being clear about what the need is, what the expectation might be, what the invitation is.
Be specific, clarify the options, clarify the terms. Say what it is you want done by when and what you're asking. And this is where you get into, if you've made the wrong call, if somebody is really having a difficulty, they'll explain to you why they can't do it. This is not taboo information. This is not anything to shy off of. As long as you make clear to people, if you say no to this, that's fine. We just are starting with you. We just want to have this conversation. We believe this is something you are going to want to be a part of. Making those invitations and talking. There was a poll done by the Institute of Christian Philanthropy out of Indianapolis that said, I don't know exactly, I don't know their research methodology. They polled lifetime church members from 7 different denominations, United Methodist being one of them. 62% of those polled said no one from their church had ever come to talk one-on-one with them about their giving. Now, of the 38% that said someone had come, 99%, 37 out of the, however you do the math, 99% said they made some financial response. Okay, so if 62% never get asked, but the 38% that do get asked, just about everybody gives. What does that indicate about the 62%? Somebody ought to go and ask them real fast. I'm dealing with a church right now. I won't say who it is, but the pastor's furious. A long-time church member just made a $150,000 gift to a feeding program in Iowa. And the pastor said, why didn't you do it here? Why didn't you do it through the church? Why didn't you give, you know, why? What was her answer? That's it. They asked me for it. You never asked. A generic, everybody needs to support the church budget, a funding campaign in the fall, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about talking one-on-one. There was one other thing that happened up here that I would suggest you not do. Just one. We're going to get other people involved. You start talking generically about getting more people, getting more people. At the point where you come to a person's home to talk to them about their giving their gift to something, your focus should be on them, on the individuals. We're not talking about Joe Blow and Sally. We're not talking about anybody else. We want to talk to you and find out where you are in this. And we're going to go to the next, we're talking to them and where they are in this. Hopefully, you would know that in your congregation, if you've gotten a visit, that you're not the only ones, that nobody's expecting you to fund the whole thing. Make it personal, make it relational, make it about the outcome, not about the money. That's where we fall down. It's all about the money. We're afraid of offending people because we know times are tough. Nobody has as much money as they really would like to have. Everybody would like to have more, but hear this. Almost everybody in your church would like to give more. So meet with them and talk to them about how that might happen. $1,000 over the next year gives you more opportunities to think in terms of how we can raise that money, save that money, reallocate that money, than just going out and saying, we'd like you to make a gift of $1,000. Yeah, Rick?
The question I had is obviously this was, you came up with something where, yeah, there was a deficit in the church, but it was an opportunity. How would you see this conversation going? If it is just your annual you know, the church doesn't have any big plans to do anything different, but you know what? We gotta be able to fund our $200,000 budget this year. How do you see, is that conversation a little bit different? Where does it go from there?
That conversation can be a little bit different. That's also a conversation that you may bring together the key leadership in a church. One of the things, Pareto's law kicks in. 20% of the people provide 80% of the support in a church.
Right.
Just an example of something that happened here in this conference. 2 years ago, I went out to do a consultation with a 3-point charge who was saying we're $8,000 behind in our budget. And this is, you know, $38,000 budget. You know, this was a huge amount for them, not a huge dollar amount. There were 40 people that came out from these 3 congregations to say, what are we going to do about this? And I just said, all right, you've got 12 weeks between now and the end of the year. Who here is willing to give $100 a week for the next 12 weeks? 3 hands shot up. I said, who here is willing to give $50 a week for the next 12 weeks? 2 hands went up. Who here is willing to give $25 a week to get the church out? What we did, just going around the room and getting pledges to take care of that, they bridged the gap, they got committed, they funded the budget just by talking about it. Sometimes we just got to name what it is and then challenge people to say, I know not everybody in this room can afford this, but if there are 2 or 3 that can afford this, then we can move forward. 2 or 3 that can afford this. It really is getting past the taboo of saying it's okay to talk about money, it's okay to challenge people, it's okay to ask. When I did the extravagant generosity sessions, I told this story, and I'll tell it because it really was a great learning for me. I'm sharing this not because I learned it or somebody taught me. I'm sharing this because I didn't know what I was doing, and I did it, and it worked. And then after I had done it a few times and it worked, people started saying, oh, I don't think you should do that. So I do have a history with this. When I was the associate pastor, we had a gentleman by the name of Lucian Hooper who was in his 80s, and he had been a bigwig on Wall Street. This was when I was serving in New Jersey, just across the bridge from New York City. And Lucian had been a lifelong member of the church. And Lucian and his wife gave $10 a week to the church. And I thought, this is odd. So I went out to visit Lucian. And I said, I have a question for you. And you may think this is a terribly inappropriate question, but I just need to ask. You've worked a lifetime on Wall Street. You live in this beautiful mansion of a house. And you give $10 a week to the church. Don't you think you should maybe give more? And he said, how much more? And I thought, I think you could give $150 a week. I said, okay, well, what would happen if I gave $150? What would I get for that money? You know, I didn't go prepared for this. I didn't know when. And I started listing some of the things that we were doing, some of the ways. And I also talked about programs that right now we weren't able to do some things because we didn't have the adequate funding, but if more money came in. And I started talking about one project, and he said, so how much money do you need for this project? And I said, I think it would probably cost about $80,000. He said, I want to tell you, I think it's really inappropriate that the student assistant pastor came out and had this conversation with me. But if you send the pastor, or you send Frank Strobel, who was the chair of trustees, out to have this conversation with me, I'll increase my giving to $150. He said, I thought you were going to ask for a lot more than that. You know, who knew? And he said, and I'll talk about making the gift of $80,000. I went back and talked to the senior pastor, who yelled at me for going and bothering this man. And so they never made the visit. They never went out and talked to Lucian. And Lucian Hooper didn't leave anything to the church in the will, didn't leave anything, didn't give any, didn't increase. I say that because sometimes we need to just say what's on our mind and then let people respond to it. If we've got ministries we want to see happen, we're only going to see them happen if people step up and give to support them. And I do think it's important for the pastor, for prominent leadership, to go and have these conversations. I said before, I think now more than ever, this conference is about 20 years behind the curve. Now more than ever, we need to be in touch with the foundation and take advantage of their resources for planned giving, estate planning, endowment planning, charitable gift annuities, charitable remainder trusts, all of these vehicles that are win-win beneficial, that the best way that you can use those is to go and sit with individuals and talk about what the implications are and how to make these things happen. So we've got to kind of cultivate this. And two more things that I want to lift up with this. First is we have to show both personal and corporate appreciation. First of all, if we go and sit and ask somebody for a gift and they respond, they ought to be thanked. They ought to be thanked personally. There should be an official thanks on the part of the church. And where it's appropriate, I think we can make public appreciation for the support that we get for these individual gifts. That was more important to our parents, grandparents' generation, the name on the brick, the name on the plaque, the memorial recognition has been more important in the past. I think there's still a place for it. I think you also talk to the person and ask what they feel is appropriate. Don't ever thank somebody without their knowledge. Make sure that there is a plan for how appreciation will be shared. But the other thing is, do this regularly and often. Make this part of the regular conversation in the church. I cannot stress enough, churches today in the United Methodist denomination that do not have financial problems do not have financial problems because they talk about it openly and they deal with it directly. Churches that tend to struggle financially have a few of these things in common. One is they don't talk about money in the church. They have a history of not doing stewardship campaigns or stewardship emphases. And the leadership do not talk among themselves, not only about the vision for ministry, but also the cost of ministry. If we're going to do this and do this well, what do we need? And when we need it, it becomes a shared responsibility to raise it and to fund it. There will be, if you take this seriously, if you start talking to people about money, there will be 10 to 20% of the people you want to talk to aren't going to want to talk to you. And that's okay. Nobody has to talk to you, but you ought to ask everyone. But don't get stuck in the 10 to 20% that don't want to hear it, that don't want to do it, that don't want to talk about it. Because I'm not saying that the 80 to 90% are going to get really excited and want to talk to you about it. But there are going to be a lot of people who are open to it. For some, you may be giving them an opportunity to think in a way they've never had the opportunity to think before. You may actually give someone an opportunity to do something they're really, really excited about. And with another 10 to 20% over on the other end, you may give them the transformative opportunity to really deepen their faith because they now have found their way to use their gifts to make a significant difference in the church. I've pastored 3 different churches and worked in a 4th church as a director of Christian education. In all 4 of those churches, I went and visited and talked to people about money. In all 4 of those churches, I had very, very good experiences talking to people about money. In all 4 of those churches, I had very, very bad experiences talking to people about money. You need to get to the place where the good experiences outweigh the bad, because the good experiences actually got money to come into the church that allowed us to do things that we would not have been able to do otherwise. Talk to me. Questions? Concerns? Oh yeah, reallys. Yes?
I just know an experience I've had in the past with the pastor in the past who asked for money, insisted on knowing what people gave. And when he went out to talk to the people and he got no from some people, then he treated them differently when they were at church. When they wanted to talk and didn't have time.
Okay.
It wasn't within a few months. Those people left the church. They were mediocre givers, but
that is a serious and sincerely an issue to be clear on. When I said earlier, I think it's important for pastors to know what people give. If it's likely to impact how you will treat people, maybe you need to find somebody else to go in your place. I think there are some places where that is true. I think also you just need to perhaps work on this a little bit. When I was at my last church, we had basically 6 weeks of role-playing where I got lay people that I wanted to go visit with me, and I had them come and visit me. And I would draw a card that basically said, kind, funny, mean, you know, and so that would tell me how I was going to react to them. And we played games with it. We got to the point where we had fun with it, and everyone there felt like they knew just about if, no matter what kind of response they got, how they were going to respond. So they strategized, they planned, they went out with some preparation. I'm not asking you to go out and just, you know, knock on doors and try this, see how it goes. I really think we can begin to plan for that. And we need to know, if it's going to impact how we feel about somebody, then certainly that's not the right person to go and do the visit. But I'd still think for most of us, if we can let people know, yes is a good response, no is a good response, but there's also a lot of room in between. If you can't do this, what can you do? What are you willing to do? How could we work together? And you know, be creative. Many people may not have $1,000 in the bank. Many people may have $1,000 frozen in an investment or in assets or something. They can't just hand over the cash. But one of the things that I have asked different people to do is, would you pull together your UMW group and work on a project to raise $1,000? Would you consider working with the church on a project that would help raise $1,000? Actually, people can be appreciative. They don't have the money to give them another alternative, another option, another way to support. They feel very good about that. Other questions?
I can just offer quick testimony about when you give people an opportunity to give, sometimes pleasant things happen. We had Gene come to talk to our folks about charitable giving through the foundation, and had a neat little older lady who said she wanted to come to the meeting, and at the meeting she said she'd like to talk to Gene and I afterwards. And after everybody else left, we sat down with her, and she said, well, I've got a CD that's coming due, and I'd like to see if I can do something with it. And Gene said, so how much is the CD? And I'm thinking, oh, $2,000, $3,000. Like, $100,000. That's that's now become set up as a charitable gift toward our church eventually. So.
And it wasn't just coming due right away, it wasn't due till March. And this was in May.
Planning ahead, that's good, you know, get that.
I didn't really
Get that laid.
any response. I just thought, you know, we'll schedule this.
We went to the bank and she cashed it in that day.
That's a success story. That's in the last church I served. We had a lovely woman named Vivian. And Vivian had been in a severe car accident, so she was homebound. And she was a very big supporter of the church. And I went to her and I said, now I know you can't do visits, but would you be willing to make some phone calls for us? We're trying to raise this money. Would you do some phoning of people? Because everybody knew Vivian. And I figured if there's one person in the church that people won't say no to, it's Vivian. And I remember about 4 days later, I got this call. Well, I got like 4 or 5 calls. People were calling and said, I got this call from Vivian Weaver. And she said, hello, this is Vivian Weaver. I'm calling from the church. Would you give $100? And that was all she said. And I got a call and they, said, I got a call from Vivian Weaver, said, this is Vivian Weaver from the church. We need money. Would you give $50? And she was just making these kinds of calls. And I went out to her and I said, Vivian, why are you, doing this? And you said, well, you sat here and you said, be very clear and be very direct. And I said, well, maybe a little bit more conversation than that. And she said, well, I've been doing this for 3 days and I've got $4,500. So there's no real art to this, I guess is what I'm saying. It's that direct and to the point. Jean, you do a lot of this. Do you have any story or anything you'd contribute?
Just to re-emphasize the need to continually issue the invitations and to tell people not be afraid to be upfront about what's necessary and let them decide.
Okay.
That's the Mozambique story is one I love to tell, but that's the only time either Bill or I have walked away from a charitable gift seminar with a $100,000 check to take back. Know that a lot of it is planting seeds.
Mm-hmm.
But I think especially to just be transparent and when I haven't been afraid to give or to invite people and tell them what's necessary, they let you know where they're at. Yep. So I don't have any other stories that really
okay. Yeah, kind of the way I would conclude and summarize. This isn't something everybody can do. I do think if you're the pastor of a local church, you need to learn how to do it. Because you carry both a responsibility and a role in the church that no one else has. I'm sure some of you, if somebody gets sick and goes in the hospital, it's not a real visit unless the pastor does it. We overcome that mentality. Sometimes we have to understand you have a very specific role. You are a chief steward in the congregation. You have a responsibility to educate people as to what the fruit of generosity looks like in the church and in the congregation. This is not something everybody can do. Some people can do it really, really easily and well. Find 2 or 3 people. This doesn't have to be a huge thing. If you have a couple of people who like to visit, who are okay talking about money, who have a vision for the church, and are willing to have these conversations, you've got everything you need. But it is the invitation. It's the ask. Jesus said, you do not receive because you do not ask. Now, he was talking about something a little different, but it still applies. We've got to get over seeing money as a taboo subject in the church. We've got to be able to talk about it and talk about it without apology, to celebrate what the opportunities are, and we need to help people understand it's not just a responsibility to support the church. It's a privilege and a blessing to be able to participate in the ministries where the church is making a difference in the world. So this is one of those places where I just say, suck it up and get the courage. Have a good time talking to people about opportunities and figure out how you can invite every person in your congregation, no matter how much they're giving, to give a little more. That's one of the best ways that we can put our churches back on a solid financial footing and move into the future. So let's have a quick word of prayer and then on to the next thing. Gracious and loving God, thank you for the glory of this day. Thank you for this opportunity to be together. Thank you for this opportunity to learn together. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you in your church. We do ask that you continue to bless us and help us always be ready to extend your blessing to others. We ask in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.